Ride the Wave Media and Novel Daybreak by Crescent Communities present The Witch Movie Project.
Whoa, the violin didn't scare me that much, Courtney. The witch laughing didn't scare me that much. You know why, though? Because I am hyped up this week for the Witch Movie Project. I know it's a couple days late, but we've got a really good reason.
Yes. We had to.
We
had to pull it back.
We did because we've actually got an interview with one of these stars from one of these movies.
Yep.
Like
I never in a million years thought that was going to happen. That was just total alignment of the universe being like, oh, you're going to talk about this movie? Well, then we're going to put this person right here in your lap to actually come in physical contact with. That's amazing.
During the same week that this episode aired.
I know.
Like, that's what I can't believe. So that's why it's a little bit late. Our two movies, we're not going to tell you who the actor is that we talked to, but our two movies are Teen Witch and The Craft. But first, let's talk about this, though, because October 26th is when this all comes to the culmination of the big event at Novel Daybreak by Crescent Communities. Tell us about that, Courtney. Can you wait for that? I can't.
Oh, my gosh. It's like my entire life right now is leading up to this one moment in time when hopefully we will have lots of people joining us for our live podcast and movie screening of one of these witch movies. We're going to have a costume contest. We're going to have people dress up. It's going to be a blast. October 26th. We are actually starting a little bit early. So we said 6 p.m. for the movie, but I do have like some fun things going on at Land of a Thousand Hills coffee shop, which is right across the courtyard from where the clubhouse is. So we decided to do just kind of a meet and greet earlier. So before the event starts, come to Land of a Thousand Hills and do a little meet and greet. They've got drinks, they've got food, so you can, get a little refreshment before the event starts.
I love that. And Land of a Thousand Hills, they're actually sponsoring the costume contest. So they're going to be providing costume contest winners with prizes. I don't know what those prizes look like yet, but I bet it's going to be some good stuff. Thank you to Stacy Pure Sweat and Float Studio South Jordan. And also, Live Cake Parties is going to be putting on this event. It's going to be incredible in there. I don't even know I don't know what to expect yet. Like, it's going to be wild.
I just expect it to be a really good time. Witch's Night Out.
Witch's Night Out. What movie so far that we've done are you hoping to see get screened that night?
Oh man, I didn't expect to like Suspiria so much, but that's the one that keeps coming back in my head.
Suspiria has got a tight. I've seen the voting on that, and it's the only one that's really, really back and forth.
I know, but we got some movies coming up in the next few episodes too that are some of my favorites. So it's hard to tell.
One of my favorites is coming up. My pick is coming up, not in this episode. It's coming up. We'll see in a couple. But let's go ahead and get into this one. This is Teen Witch versus The Craft. Hope you enjoy it.
We've watched how many witch movies so far?
4. We're up to 4. Yeah, 4. And they've all been, horror movies. Just straight up scare after scare after scare. Because I think I'm the one that chose all 4 of the first ones, right? It just happened.
Right, yeah. We each had our list of picks. I felt like we needed a palate cleanser. What do you think?
So you have been on the edge of excitement, ready for this episode. Just I know you have. And do you want to introduce these two movies, or should I set them up and tell the people what we're going to dive into without saying the names of the movies, even though they can see it? But I love doing it this way because it's kind of fun. But
yeah,
we're going to dive into the wicked world and good world of teenage witchcraft that we didn't even think about this when we paired these two movies up, but it's teenage witchcraft, high school drama, 80s, 90s. You got the late 80s, one from 89.
Yeah.
You got one from mid 90s, late 90s.
I know. And so different.
But
when you look at like one from the 80s, it was like the peak of 80s hair, 80s
Oh.
clothes, 80s music style, all of that. And then you have mid 90s and it's like peak 90s, right?
way nice, like, edgy. It was, you know what? It feels like they were made in two totally different time periods.
Yeah. And it
7
wasn't
years
even
apart.
that many years
7
apart.
years, 7 years apart is all. Like, that's
Yeah.
the thing to me to think about now that we put that into perspective. Not only that, but there are other similarities along with this, and it couldn't be two more different movies, honestly. But even the lead characters in both, the Robins, the Battle of the Robins. You got Robin on one side,
Yeah.
and Robin on the other.
All of that was unintentional. I knew that these were both teen witch movies, teenagers being witches, and that's why I paired them together thinking that would be good. But when I watched them both back to back, I could not believe how many things were like connected, or even though they're so different, totally different types of movies. One is very cheesy. One is like very like even the people who were in it were like, oh,
yeah.
that was terrible.
Over the top cheesy. I feel like it's on purpose. It's got to be on purpose.
Yeah, for sure.
Go ahead and, what is that first movie? What's the first one we're talking about?
Of course, the 1989 Teen Witch.
Yes.
It was Hollywood's response to Teen Wolf, thinking it might be a female.
Let me tell
version.
you this. Now, I will say, you know, before I watched, I did dip off into some of my medicinal cannabis, which leads me to putting on Teen Witch and getting about 15 to 20 minutes in and thinking, where's Michael J. Fox? Like, that's really what I
love to have Michael J. Fox in this movie, by the way. I would have loved that.
Oh, absolutely. But tell me, what do you know about the Teen Wolf / Teen Witch?
Yeah, so it's interesting because and by the way, Mental Floss is again coming in with all of the facts.
Oh, yeah.
Super love. I mean, for some reason that's what always comes up when I'm looking for cool, interesting facts. But they had released, or they were wanting to release Teen Witch as a like an offshoot of Teen Wolf and have the same kind of font, logo, poster style, you know, maybe kind of like reaching out to the female audiences for that comparison. But once they made the movie, they realized it kind of sits on its own. It was its own thing. And so they didn't end up kind of partnering them.
Well, that makes a little more sense because, like you said, the font, even the font on the artwork, it's the same. It's wild how they had that they had that crossover and then cut it, I guess, somewhere in the production process.
Yeah, didn't end up having like as much of a crossover, but yeah.
So tell us the plot. Like, what's the plot of Teen Witch?
Well, this is what I loved. I watched it when I was younger, so this is me bringing it back and kind of doing the whole watch a movie from your childhood and see how does it hold up? How do I feel about it now as an adult? And I loved like opening sequence. There's the whole 80s MTV music vibes with Mist, and you know, the hair is rocking. There's glitter, slow motion walking, all that good stuff. It's so 80s. It's fantastic.
Let's not forget that the music right here at the beginning. Is this when we hear what's the song we hear? We hear the rap song here from from the boys, and I believe it's the High School Blues.
Yeah, High School Blues, these three white boys rapping. And you know what's interesting is there was no soundtrack to the movie. They didn't, even though there's a couple of musical numbers, kind of. There's cheerleaders dancing in the locker room. They do this whole number about boys. I like boys or something.
Yeah. It was a musical. There was a musical going on.
But they didn't make a soundtrack. They didn't record anything and release the soundtrack. And so they had to redo it years later with some other vocalists, some other people that redid the music, and then they could release those. They even did a Teen Witch. They tried to do a Teen Witch musical, maybe on Broadway. Will Ferrell was involved, Kristen Wiig. some people were gonna kind of revive Teen Witch as a musical. So
I think that there's actually a Teen Witch Live. If it's not still there, it was maybe a couple years ago at the Groundlings Theater in Los Angeles.
yeah,
Might still be there, not sure.
Yep.
But it's very obvious to me also that this was one of the first movies that for the white kids. Sure, we look now. Yeah, it's hilarious. You look back at these three rappers, and I got the lyrics here. It's taking our time when we're feeling cool. Don't really need a bag hanging at school. It's okay. We got nothing to lose. Can't you see, baby? It's the high school blues. Now, like, sure, I love it. I laughed. I thought it was great. But you know what I got to do is give credit here, because this is one of the first movies that I could recall that did not stereotype whoever was on the other side of the music. If you would have seen a group of white kids in another movie, it would have been rock music. It would have been Fast Times at Ridgemont High. It wouldn't have been hip hop music. I really got to give a shout out right there and give credit to whoever's decision that was. As corny as it looks,
it is corny. I
did appreciate. I had an appreciation for that.
That's awesome. I think I would have maybe paid money to see you watch that for the first time.
Oh, I'm going to tell you now. Okay, so we haven't told the people this is the first time I have seen this movie.
Okay.
It was my first watch of Teen
Love
Witch.
it.
I will say that I had it on, and maybe I leaned over for a minute and I was looking at something else, and that part hit, and I was like, whoa. And I grabbed the controller here on the Apple TV, and I had to run it back and start it over. I mean, I pulled up the lyrics for it, Courtney. I mean,
yeah, definitely. I think the music is where it's at.
It's ingrained. It's in my.
I think you'll pay attention to that. And by the way, if we're talking about the musical numbers, the cheerleader dance "I Like Boys" they do in the locker room, that is the only appearance you'll see of Rita Wilson, who was one of the dancers there.
No way.
Yeah. So then I thought, thinking back at when I watched this movie when I was a kid, I was like, yeah, I remember that movie, and I only remember one person in it. I thought everyone else is probably like a no-name person. They probably weren't in anything else. I couldn't remember anything about anyone else. The only person I remember from it was, see her name, Zelda Rubinstein.
Oh yeah.
Because I love the Poltergeist movie. I mean, she's infamous for being the medium and this house is clear.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's maybe. I think you could be a good remake for if they remake the Poltergeist. Maybe you could step into that role.
Sign me up.
Yeah. I think that'd be you, because that.
I love her.
What you just did there, that's top notch, Courtney. That's Oscar award winning.
Yeah. Well, she's adorable. She's 4'3". She's got that adorable voice, and she is hilarious in this movie as Madame Serena. I love her, and I remembered her being in it. But then I look at the rest of the cast, and there's Robin Lively, right? We talked about how it's a Robin in this movie and a Robin in The Craft. Sorry if I spoiled it. That's the other movie we're doing today.
If they hadn't figured it out by now, then yeah.
You can, yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I was like, oh, this girl's cute, whatever. And I'm looking up the details, and I'm like, Robin Lively is Blake Lively's sister. What?
Yeah.
How relevant is that right now? She's all over the news. Her husband, Ryan Reynolds, they're so in right now.
Oh yeah. And then you got some other heavy hitters in the movie as well. Like it doesn't just, there's who else did you pick out before I get into them?
Yeah. So this is what's super interesting. I always thought the brother was kind of this like creepy. He does a really good job of being this creepy, disgusting, annoying little brother.
Oh yeah.
He was 14 at the time. Joshua Miller plays him.
That's
and
Richie,
what's so interesting about him is he is like famous family. I'm reading here on the Mental Floss article about this movie, but he's the son of playwright Jason Miller, who's Oscar nominated. He has a grandfather, Bruno Bernard, who's one of the world's first celebrity photographers. And he is in the new movie with Russell Crowe. It's The Exorcism.
I saw the Exorcism movie. Now I don't want to get too far off topic, but that movie, not too bad. I don't know if you've seen it yet. You should check that out.
No, but I mean, what a perfect movie to go right in through this genre that we're, already talking about. He's rocking it. So
I mean,
good for him. Good for Joshua Miller. That's all I can say about that.
right? And who else you got there? Who else you got?
Okay, so Louise, the main character, played by Robin Lively, she's got a famous dad. I know when we were like watching, I kept thinking he looks so familiar. Who is he? And then it's funny because in The Craft, to connect those movies, there's a scene where they're watching Bewitched.
Oh, and I see. Look at you making a connection.
Nick Sargent, it plays Louise's father. He's Darren Stevens from Bewitched. And I know I don't want to get too far off topic, but we don't talk about Bewitched in this movie, Witch Movie Project, because it's a TV show. But I will say one thing. I watched a lot of Bewitched when I was a kid. Lots of Bewitched. And I always felt so frustrated that Darren would not let his wife practice her witchcraft. She's a witch, Darren. Okay, you're married to a witch. How fair is that? Just take advantage of the fact that you have this amazing, awesome wife and stop trying to harsh her vibe, right?
Right? I mean,
that's all I have to say about that. Okay. I just had to rant for a second.
you can rant all
like,
you want.
It irritated me so much as a kid. Here was little 5-year-old Courtney watching Nick at Night Bewitched, and I was like, why is he such a jerk to his wife?
Hold her down. That's just, we could get into that about how society's been. No, we better not.
Yeah, well,
Ready to rant?
yeah, that is. There's a lot I could say about that. I could go on for a while.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So let's not do that.
since
right
it was
now.
in both movies, I wanted to point that out. But yeah, he plays her dad. So he makes a couple of appearances in this movie. So that's kind of a little cameo nod to Bewitched. It's kind of cute.
Wow, that's a great one there. What else you got? Who else you got? I like this. Let's see what else you got.
So I've been dying to ask you. So in this movie, she's finding out she turned 16. She's getting powers for her. A lot of movies about teen witches are kind of along those lines. There's a theme there where it's like, you reach a certain age, you're going to come into your powers. And that's what Louise is discovering about herself. But she's centering it around how much she has this crush on this football player boy. He's the popular boy in school, and she wants to get him. Did you recognize him, Brad?
I did not. I not off the top of my head. I did not.
One of your
still didn't look it
favorite
up.
shows. He makes a
I-
cameo appearances in one of your favorite shows.
Oh, was this The Boy Meets World?
No,
Because I think there's a
but
Boy Meets World.
you are on the right page. Okay, so if you noticed, Brad's played by Dan Gothier. I think I'm
Gauthier?
saying that right. He makes an appearance on a couple of episodes of Friends
Friends, no way.
as Chip Douglas. Chip, right? Monica goes out on a date with Chip, and he used to date Rachel.
I didn't
You
even.
remember him?
I did not even put that together. That's insane. That's
I
insane.
know, blows your mind. So
I can pull up one even crazier here for myself, and I'm gonna have to put this out there. But Zelda and Mandy, who plays Polly
mhm.
in the movie, they were in a little lesser known spinoff of Cheers called the Tortellis. There's only very few people have ever seen that, and me being a Cheers
Oh
fan,
my
I've seen
gosh.
everything Cheers related, and they're in that. It's called the Tortellis, and it was a spinoff of Carla and
Yes.
her family, and it don't only lasted a couple episodes. Believe me, that's knowledge that I'm pulling out. So if we're gonna go
I
back and forth
totally
here,
thought I recognized her. Yes.
that's them.
Yeah, Polly. The girl who plays Polly.
Mandy Ingber is her name.
Yes. So
Ingber.
she is
daughter.
she has had some quotes. This was like, she called this her worst summer job was filming Teen Witch.
Oh, I believe it. I
And
believe
she's still
them.
so embarrassed about the top that rap that she gives in the movie. She says that's on the internet forever. She will never live it down. right?
I hate to tell her, but there's way worse stuff out there on the internet than that. So she doesn't have much to worry about. We love it, Mandy. That was Mandy, right? Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're the plot is super simple. We're not really following along with the movie, and that's okay because honestly, it's just girl comes into her powers. This object, this necklace finds her. She has this witchy shop that she keeps going back to. Madame Serena
Oh, yeah.
is there to kind of be her guide and her mentor in how to use these powers. I love Madame Serena because she's over there like, I'm going to use this young girl's powers to get me some. And she turns a frog into a handsome young man for herself.
Yeah. And what did she bring in on that plate? I swore I saw a bong on there. I'm like, what? And she's like, I never do this for people. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute now. Like 1989. She's yeah.
She's
What was
pretty
it?
cool.
Yeah, I know.
She's pretty hip. I gotta say, yeah. I love the scene where she's talking, kind of consoling Louise. Louise is kind of going through a rough time, and she's like pats her lap, and she goes to sit on her lap, but she's like way bigger than her, so they have
Yeah.
to switch places because they
Yeah.
just laugh. Like she's gonna go sit on her lap instead.
I love it. So
Yep.
you gave the plot right there, and basically, if you take what you said and mix that in with cheesy special effects and some catchy tunes,
Yep.
the movie, like that's it. That's what you
Yeah.
have.
Yep. Which is interesting because I, again, did not think about all these parallels, but The Craft, our second movie, having all of these little things that kind of connect, where it's like there is a scene, quite a few scenes actually, with the kind of popular cheerleader girls in the locker room. You've got the witchy shop with a sort of mentor-like character that is consoling Robin Tunney, who plays Sarah. When she's struggling with her powers and what's going on in her life, she goes back to the witchy shop and gets consoled. I mean, this is like, it's so interesting because you take Teen Witch, you make it darker and more goth and a little bit of horror in there, and you get The Craft.
Exactly. You throw a snake in there too, and that's it. And that's what's always kept me from watching The Craft. I've watched it. Are we done with Teen Witch? Do you have a final thought on that before we get to The Craft and my phobia of snakes?
Yeah. Okay. So we'll let you rest for a second more.
Okay.
Finishing up on Teen Witch.
Yeah,
I had a couple of notes here. I loved when she's learning how to use her powers and she's learning how to use the words, the will, the way, all the things that I teach about magic and how that actually plays out. She's calling the winds, kind of practicing these spells, learning how to get a little stronger with them.
Yeah.
Again, she uses glamour magic like they do in The Craft, where she makes herself up to be really super popular, cute. Her 80s style when she is dressing up, it's absolutely gorgeous 80s style outfits. I mean, I would absolutely wear some of those outfits today. But yeah. Robin Lively said that those were some of her real outfits that her mom dressed her in.
So she just wardrobe on set. Her mom just dressed her and showed up on set. I mean, that's awesome.
Her mom was in it. Like, her mom had it going on. She knew exactly what to put her in. And she had, like, in one scene, she had, like, the one jeweled earring. It was, like, just on one side. I almost wore that today just for fun. But I was like,
I'm kind of disappointed that you didn't put that on today.
Yeah, just one earring. Just one.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, just peak 80s style. Just amazing. But I wrote down the whole time, kind of the theme here was she's doing all this to get the attention of this guy, this football player, this popular guy. This is kind of 16 Candles. She's driving around in his cool sports car that's a convertible, and she's trying to get the guy, Brad. But there is something that just doesn't feel right. None of it feels real. She knows that this isn't her real self and that she's kind of getting his attention based on kind of false pretenses. And I wrote down, this is how I feel when I wear false eyelashes. Every time I've tried to wear fake nails or fake eyelashes, I feel like I'm walking around as a fraud. And I have to tell everybody
Really?
Literally, my friends could tell you, I go to like a party or something and I'm wearing like fake nails. They're like, "Oh, I love your nails." And I go, "They're not real. They're not real."
You
Did
just
you know
have
that?
you just have to do it. You just have to do that, huh? Like,
Do not like the feeling of like, this isn't actually me. This isn't actually who I am. So I get that. And I think that's a great message as a teen movie, anyways, to be like, hey, you can doll yourself up all you want, express yourself. Just know that when you are true to yourself, that's when it really matters, right?
oh, I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. That's a great message there, right?
Yeah. So at the end, I mean, she kind
It-
of gives up the power, or she gives up the necklace, but she's like, I'm just going to be me. And I'm going to make sure that Brad likes me for me. She still gets the guy. She's at prom. They get to dance. By the way, Robin Lively said that she reenacted the dance scene at the prom for Blake and Ryan's wedding.
No way.
Just a
And,
side note.
and
Just
we
a
weren't
little
invited.
tidbit. I know. We'll tag them. We'll be invited next time. We
Yeah,
love Blake. We love Ryan. We went to Deadpool. We love all that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta say,
So
for my first watch, this movie was incredible. I'm gonna definitely watch it again.
yeah.
I love like the high school stuff. I love the high school movies that it's the nostalgia. It's all of that. It brings back some of your own memories, but at the same time, you're like, my school didn't look like that. It didn't look perfect. And then there's all the stuff that comes along with the teenager being a
Mhm.
teenager. And I also think it's pretty funny that none of them kids are kids. They're all
Yeah.
25 years old and more.
Oh, yeah.
But they're playing it. And I really thought it was fun. It was honestly just like watching some kids go to school and live life for the first, 30 minutes of the movie. And I was just enjoying it. I was like, all right, yeah, this is my vibe.
Yeah.
And this was the one, it's not scary. You can put this on with
No.
the kids on. Like, I thought this was solid choice. This was a
Oh,
solid
yeah.
choice.
Worth a watch, worth like a family movie night or something like that. And then as you talk about high school experiences, that's where in switching to The Craft, this is where I really resonated. I was like, this is taking me back to high school so hardcore. And it's more realistic to me as my high school experience than anything that was like Teen Witch or Saved by the Bell or, this kind of like idealistic version of like, the skater kids and
Yeah.
the whatever. It was like, yeah, my high school experience was a lot more like The Craft. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm not sure.
That's why you're here, is because you're
Yeah.
the expert. You're my inside expert on what's going on here. But I gotta say that they did a great job in The Craft of capturing that look, because we're children from the 90s. We went to school in the 90s. I mean, I'm a child of the 80s. We're not gonna say anything else about Miss Courtney Pearl here. You're
I'm hundreds of
790.
years old.
What are you? You're 700 and what? How old are you? So where was I going with that? Because
Yeah. So the 90s.
the 90s, like the look they had,
Yeah.
we all knew a group of these girls. I even now in my neighborhood that we're in, I'll see a group of girls walking down the sidewalk every once in a while. I'm like, oh, there goes The Craft. I automatically think, because there's just this look. Is that what that?
Yeah.
This is normal.
This movie was like the birth of goth, right?
Yeah.
Like that kind of look wasn't as mainstream until this movie came out, and this became the black lipstick, the oh gosh, they were in a Catholic school. So
Yeah.
Catholic school uniforms, but they each had their own way of wearing it that was just like to their personality a little bit.
It's
And
almost like a Fresh Prince, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, when he went to the prep school, but he had his jacket on
Yeah.
inside out. It was. Did you notice that their getup, what they were wearing in the movie, went from kind of dull, and then as they got powerful in the movie, it started they started
Ramped up.
getting more makeup. They started getting. Did you notice that? Because I picked up
Yeah.
on that. Yeah. And this was
Yeah.
not. This was probably. I gotta say, and I think I already mentioned it, but this is probably only the second time I've ever seen this movie because I can't deal with snakes. I got a huge phobia of it. I freeze up. I'm not afraid of. I mean, sure, I'm afraid of them, but it's not a. I can't tell myself to not be. If I see a
Yeah.
picture of one, I just freeze
Yeah.
up. Just something in my body reacts. It's finally I was able to power through and
You
watch
just
the prayer.
shut your eyes. It's so funny that after like we talked about Suspiria last week and we're talking about like the blood and gore of that movie was so much. And then the snakes in this movie are what does you in. But
That's it. That's
it's
the one.
totally true. If you have a phobia, you have a visceral reaction to it. And there is a scene where when they're getting ready to invoke the spirit, in that scene, and she's got the snake in her hands, and she's like, "They're very misunderstood creatures. They deserve respect." I wrote down how the serpent is a very feminine symbol. It represents the goddess most often, and even in Christian or in the Hebrew Bible, the story of the snake tempting Adam, it was believed to be a code or a symbol of the goddess or of maybe perhaps Lilith, who was tempting Adam, not an Eve, not just an actual literal snake. So the snake or serpent is a very feminine energy.
So you're saying, if I get this right, and maybe this explains a lot from my own high school, is that my phobia of snakes means I'm just terrified of women. Is that
Maybe.
okay.
Something to explore,
That's why I
something
was
to
so
think about.
yeah. That's why I was so awkward when I was, approaching females in my early days. I mean, I asked my wife. I'm still awkward approaching her now. So
Yeah. Well, this movie, if this movie isn't triggering to your high school days, it definitely was for me. I
No.
took note of some moments that were obviously references to very like sexist, misogynist, and
Yeah.
racist comments. And I thought to myself, the 90s was really the peak of that testosterone energy in high school, where it was like okay to treat women, use words like slut and whore towards women to degrade them.
Yep.
And some of the comments made to the girls when they're being bullied by other girls, it's just awful.
It is, and I really do think you're on to something there because there were a lot of stuff said. It was awful. The racism in the movie, honestly, after researching it, the racism had to be written into the movie when Rachel True got cast as Rochelle. Now-
Yes. And she was the first one cast of the 4 girls.
Yeah, so she wasn't too excited, too thrilled about that, I don't believe, until later on as she understood. But I'm kind of with her on that. I'm with her, but at the same time, I do see it because it was a big, it's hard to say it's a big undertone, but it was in the movie.
Yeah.
It was there. It was
It
relevant.
was there. Yeah.
And it was there and it was uncomfortable. How about that? It was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That racism to me is more uncomfortable than evil witches. Like,
yeah, exactly. And I think that was kind of the point.
Yeah.
It's interesting because the producer, Doug Wick, said that they forced them to have an R rating for this movie, even though there was nothing in it other than teens practicing magic,
That's right.
which they said teens practicing black magic was the only reason they gave it an R rating. He said, this is a modern day witch burning.
Well, anything with the MPAA, you might as well throw out the fucking window. I know I said F right there. I said fucking because the MPAA would just censor that. And I don't get me started on FCC or MPAA for any kind of ratings because, yeah, that's a whole crooked thing in its own. But
well, in reality, this movie did represent and show witchcraft in a probably more accurate light. They had consultants on set that were Wiccan to make sure that they were respectful of the Wiccan religion. And I do want to point out, so in the beginning, you see the pentacle symbol, right? And the pentacle is the star without the circle around it, the 5-pointed star. the 5-pointed star with a circle around it is a pentagram. But this is a representation, or it comes in Christian as the 5 points where Jesus is nailed to the cross. And it is a protection symbol in most witchcraft or Wiccan come from. But if you see it upside down with the ram's head, that is typically used in Satanism or by Satanists. So when she asks them in the beginning of the movie, when Sarah starts, she's brought into this coven because they need a fourth. They've been trying to call the four corners and they've been trying to invoke with the elements, and they need a fourth person to do that. And they find out Sarah is already powerful.
Mhm.
And Sarah is not into all this. Like, she has never been dabbled in witchcraft or anything like that. So she's like, what is Manon? And what
Yeah.
is it the devil, or is that like God? And she's, kind of trying to understand, like most people who don't understand witchcraft or what Wicca is. And they're like, no, it's everything. It's like if God and the devil were playing football, Manon would be the field they play on and the sun that shines on them.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, what a beautiful image. What a great way to describe it. Although they still use the patriarchal him
Yeah.
in describing the deity of Manon. But for the most part, that's
This
really
was
accurate.
1996, so they hadn't crossed quite over completely to letting women
To the goddess.
be in stuff. Yeah. No, I love that. That's great insight. And how much of that was realistic? Like, I guess is a
It's
question.
very accurate. I mean, even to today's standards, like, so you go into one of these like witchcraft or witchy or crystal shops or healing shops. I mean, they all kind of overlap in a lot of ways. And
Yeah.
so you'll see a lot of the same stuff that you saw in the witch shop when they go in. Bonnie picks up, played by Nev Campbell, by the way,
Yeah.
picks up a journal that she wants, and it has a triangle symbol on it. And, it's just it could be a lot of things. I mean, it's just a triangle, but it represents perfectness and unity. It represents the element of fire, and it is the masculine symbol. So, there's a lot of like little things in the background, things that you would see, and the books that she hands them about invoking the spirit or about using witchcraft. It's like, you can absolutely go to witchy shops now and pick up a lot of really great information. So
I love that. Now, talking about the witchy shop, that's Panpipes, magical witch shop.
Yes.
I have been there. It's on Santa Monica Boulevard.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I've lived there for a while. Yeah, I've been. Now, I used to dabble into the witch shops, not into anything other than going in and looking. But yeah, I have been to Panpipes, I believe it is. And somebody from the movie actually bought that store.
Oh yeah. For Fairuza Balk, who plays Nancy.
That's
she
right.
was not a pagan, or wasn't even really aware of pagan things until she did this movie, and she realized this makes a lot of sense, and she became a pagan after filming this movie, and she bought that shop to save it from going under.
And it did, and it's still there. I believe it's still there.
Yeah, she's incredible, by the way. I love her.
Like I love that. I love that though. And then let's get into a little bit of the plot of the movie. I mean, it's almost the same as we had in Teen Witch. It's teenage witchcraft and kids in high school.
Yeah.
Fill in the
How
blank.
did you like the soundtrack to this movie?
This one was a banger from the beginning.
So
the very
good.
first track out of the gate was what was it? It was
I wrote down everything that I could.
there's a Portishead track in there that hit hard.
Jewel,
Yeah, like there's
Juliana Hatfield's Letters to Cleo, Space Hogs. I was just writing them down as they were coming up. I'm like, ooh, that's a good one. Ooh, that's another good one. So, I mean, if nothing else, you haven't watched the movie yet, or this isn't your thing, go get the soundtrack. I think that's like fantastic.
It was even John Lennon and Paul McCartney. Like they're even on Tomorrow. They did Tomorrow Never Knows. The entire thing was You could actually just, you should just get the soundtrack and listen to it. This was the soundtrack of the 90s.
Speaking of that, the cast, you'll notice a lot of people were in Scream.
Yeah.
Robin
Go over-
Tunney that came from Empire Records. Some of the same people that were in Clueless. You get kind of like all those. In fact, Alicia Silverstone was considered for the part of Sarah before, but she was done with Clueless and she had another project or something that she was doing.
Could you imagine?
So, could you imagine?
Yeah, what would that be like? I mean, if she would have
Coming
pulled
from
it off, I'm sure.
Clueless as Cher and then playing Sarah the witch on The Craft.
Now let's talk more about Manning.
Mm-hmm.
Who is Manning?
Well, a lot of this comes from the Wiccan faith. So, like, if paganism was a indoctrinated religion, Wicca would probably be it. And so a lot of people think witch, they think Wicca. And a lot of what these girls are practicing and what the rule of 3 they talk about many times is like, if you are pointing your finger at someone else casting spells, you have 3 fingers pointed back at you. You'll get whatever you send out into the universe 3 times. And whether that's an accurate depiction of how energy works, I go into that a little bit on my show, but that's kind of like a rule. And so Wiccan has its definite like doctrine. It has its books that rules to follow, covens that you join, and there are leaderships. So Manon, I think, is coming from that tradition or coming from that belief system. So it's like they have their deity that they worship. And when they say invoking the spirit in the movie, they're talking about his spirit. They're like invoking that deity into their body. Right.
Well, Manon is not a real spirit in the Wiccan world. That's
right.
Just made up for the movie, right?
I believe so. But it's coming from a lot of they wanted to be very respectful of the Wiccan tradition. So they didn't want anything to offend the Wiccan people.
Which WICH goes to when they do the spells in the movie, they're doing actual Wiccan casting, I guess.
Yeah. I wrote down a lot of the chanting that they do, and when they say in perfect love and perfect trust, as they're joining the circle to cast spells, those are all usable chants and spells that are used as above, so below.
That goes to real life because an official website, I don't know if you've looked or seen any of this, but there's an official website for the movie, and they talked about the crew having strange and mysterious occurrences happen on set while they were filming these scenes.
Oh, yeah.
What happened was there was at one time a flock of bats was hovering over the set. There was times when the candles would go out automatically. Water started raising up. Like there's only when they would do what was the line Nancy says, "Man and fill me." Right at that exact moment is when the water started. There's no way that they weren't controlling the water. They said that's why
they had a park ranger tell them exactly where to set up their whole thing for the scene so that the water wouldn't be in their way. And during that invoking the spirit scene, they still had the water come up, the waves came up and washed out the set.
Even Andrew Fleming, the director, even said that every time the girls started the ceremony, and only when they would start the ceremony, the waves would start coming up tremendously fast, pounding heavily. Then right when Nancy says her line, "Man, fill me," right at that exact moment, we lost power. It was very strange. That's an exact quote from Andrew Fleming. So there was something weird going on. Like you don't mess around in there and do real witchcraft and not expect. They don't know. The witches out there don't know, right? On the other dimension or whatever. How is that happening?
Yeah.
How does that work? Do we have to communicate and say, "Hey, we're going to do some chanting. We don't mean it."
Yeah.
Just for shits and giggles. Like, how do we convey that to the other world there?
Well, I know that there are certain recommended techniques for cleansing and warding. And anytime someone is going to cast a circle or perform any kind of anything, even when I'm doing healing work, which is not necessarily witchcraft by any typical definition, but I personally don't really see a whole lot of division. Anyway, you would want to kind of set things up with your intention, and you do warding and protecting. When I'm reading tarot, I don't just pull out my cards and just start doing it. I usually start with some kind of a warding and protecting, a meditation, a drumming, a drawing of the circle, or the calling of the corners. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but setting your intention for what you're about to do and saying, this is what I'm doing. This is the, I don't want any harm to come to me or to anyone, and that kind of thing. That would have been a good idea. I don't know if they had anybody doing that on set, but it sounds like definitely the power they were influencing on what they were doing, it must have had an impact. I mean, as I said, the girl who plays Nancy, she believed in it. Once she started doing this work with the crew on this movie, she was like, there's something real to this. There's something that I really am feeling here. So with the heart, with the will and the way and the words all happening all at once, I guess they couldn't escape those strange things from happening, right?
I want to ask you on the back to the topic of the Wiccan, because we're talking about it. Are all witches Wiccan?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. I'm glad you asked that, because I have a lot of people that tell me, they're like, how can you call yourself a witch? Like, so you're Wiccan? And I'm like, no, I'm not Wiccan. I'm a solitary practitioner.
Okay.
I'm not part of a coven. I practice witchcraft in my own way, in my own time. And there are, plenty of people that do that. And even being pagan doesn't necessarily mean that you're witch. Or I think that there, again, is a lot of overlap. I think there's a lot of when you're doing energy work and that kind of thing, and energy healing, some people like to stay in their lane and be like, nope, I'm none of those things. I'm just an energy healer, or whatever, their personal beliefs or spirituality is. But for me, I follow a lot of people that are just solitary practitioners. They just practice witchcraft. So
now tell me, which branch of witchcraft then does light as a feather, stiff as a board come in? Because that scene had me shook.
Yeah.
Where does that happen?
So I would call that the coven of all teenage girls at a sleepover.
Right? And boys, because I definitely tried light as a feather, stiff as a board.
Did you? I've never tried it. Did it work?
That never happened. What happened?
No.
No.
I've heard so many stories of friends who were like, oh my gosh, I totally tried it and it worked. And I'm skeptical, but also I'm kind of like, maybe it did. Maybe something happened. I don't know. I personally have never tried it. I have not delved into the kind of things that I do now until the last few years. So
Hey.
I was not a teenage witch.
I would love if anybody out there has done this or wants to do this with us. We got to try this. If you've seen it happen and really,
I'm all for it. Yeah.
Hit us up. Hit us up. I want to hear some stories on that. But that scene, and then when she says, what's the line? She says, "You got to try that" or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. I'd love to try that. And when she's like, guys, it's not working, and she's this far off the ground.
Yeah.
Man, that scene was that's when the movie really got fun for me. And out of just the high school part, it was like, uh-oh, we're getting serious now. Like, this is like, what's up? Like, that's not
of all the spells you see in this movie, I think light as a feather, stiff as a board is the most relatable. The most like, oh, we've all tried that. Like, kind of a thing.
And heard stories. Like we said, it's a myth. It's worked. It's not worked. It's, I love that. That's something that they brought into the movie, like you said, that related to everybody, and then they go into the deeper, darker stuff.
Yes.
And why are they doing that? What is this battle between these witches?
And so this is, again, taking you back to the 90s. Those of us who remember that time period and being in high school.
Oh,
I don't know if high school is still like it was in the 90s. I would like to think we've grown. We're in an awakened time period, a new renaissance, if you will. But in the 90s, there was a very big class distinction between the popular kids, those that belong, those that are accepted, and those that are not. And I don't know, a lot of movies in this time period came out that were like high school things. They came out kind of with that theme of like, these are the weirdos, right?
Yeah.
Nancy is a self-proclaimed weirdo, and they're bullied.
They even tell when they're on the bus.
Yep.
He says, "Look out for the weirdos. We are those weirdos." I love that. That hit.
I wish I had the confidence of Nancy in that, when I was that age. I wish I had the confidence to just like have my little goth heart be out there and be myself. I was the theater kid, which is almost the same kind of geek, but I was not into like witchcraft and things like that yet. But what I want to point out with this is that witchcraft in all of the centuries that we bring it up in, it often stems from a place of powerlessness, right? Like marginalized groups and societies, Rochelle, being called names, racist names by the bully, who, by the way, was played by Christine Taylor. She's Ben Stiller's wife, played Marsha Brady. Love that.
Wow, look at you.
Anyway, she is obviously bullying and making her feel terrible. And so what's a way to feel like you can gain your power back? That you can feel like, listen, I don't have to take this. I don't have to degrade myself. Like witchcraft was a way, and I talk about this a little bit in the first episode of Practically Magic I decided to do on curses, because I wanted to talk about, well, is cursing necessarily bad? Or is there a purpose for it sometimes? And she does the spell with the braid magic where she takes her hair, she braids it into her hair. I love braid magic. I participate in braid magic all the time. It's when you're braiding your hair and you weave in spells, or you chant, or you put your intentions into what you're doing when you're braiding. So I love that they showed that in the movie, because I
got a whole head here now, Courtney. I need mine. I need some
you need to start getting into some braid magic.
Braid magic. I like that. Go ahead.
Yeah, which is a lot of why like the Nordic cultures, and you'll see braiding in like a lot of indigenous peoples all over the world, not just Native American, but all over the world. There's braiding hair, which can be related right to that braid magic. Like you're not just braiding because it's cute or whatever. You're braiding because you're putting in a spell of protection, a spell of empowerment, or in this case, she's cursing this girl who's bullying her. And I think that a lot of the cursing that starts out when they start going dark, it's not necessarily dark. It's just that these poor girls are powerless and helpless to these high school, feelings of not belonging, right?
Yeah. Now, you going back to Teen Witch, like you see the difference in the curses. Like there's, and not only that, it was difference in the love curses.
Yeah.
Like there's two of the same curses, and you got different outcomes on both sides of that, right? On both movies. So what you're saying right now is, am I gathering this correct? Am I getting this? That a curse isn't good or bad. It's that person who is doing it. It's the intention behind it. And that's why witchcraft is not necessarily, it's not all evil and it's not all good. It is what Nancy and them said. It's everything. It's this.
Yes.
I get it now. Oh my God.
Yeah. And the girl, Lirio, who plays who's the girl in the shop, who helps Sarah when Sarah's like a little bit in over her head, and she's like, my friends are going crazy and people are dying and this is scary. And she's letting her know, like, true magic is neither black nor white, is a quote that she says to the girls. And this is something to remember when people talk about dark magic or black magic. It's like Nancy in this movie is representing our shadow selves. And we all have a shadow self, just like in astrology. I'm a Pisces sun sign, for example, and there's a lot of good qualities about being a Pisces. But when it shows up in its shadow parts, it can be like desperate, needy, over emotional, not grounded. And these are all parts of myself that I can be when I'm not really in my best, most aligned self. And I think every single person walking the planet who has a human body is going to be experiencing both the most enlightened version of yourself, or the most aligned with your true self, and the most, the shadow parts. They're not bad parts. They're not parts that are needing to be shunned or squashed. They're parts that you need to embrace and love about yourself in order for it to be integrated into you, right?
It's
So where
interesting.
did Nancy, run off with her ego a little bit, maybe?
You think that hurt her in the end?
I think that's where she went wrong.
Yeah. I mean,
Because you
so
can see where she goes into her ego self as she's driving the car, and she's starting to be like, oh, all these lights are going to be green.
yeah.
Watch it. And then Sarah says, one of these times the lights are not going to be green. And that's exactly what happens.
Now, is that going back to, you said like Wicca's got its own doctrines and this and that and different forms of witchcraft might also, is that a rule somewhere? Like basically don't get too big for your britches, don't get that ego, don't think you're the best and biggest and baddest out there, because yeah, it's gonna hit you.
Yeah.
It's still gonna get you. Is that what it is, or what?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is where it's so interesting that, like maybe a naive Christian might think of Wiccan or witchcraft as something so different or so opposite, or, it's the Antichrist, it's the devil, it's the darkness, it's the evil. When in reality, almost all of the teachings are pretty in line with, in different words or ways, what they teach in Taoism or in Hinduism or in Buddhist or Christian, or, we're like, treat others the way you want to be treated. That's kind of the basic rule. Don't cast a spell you wouldn't want to have come back to you. Right.
Yeah. I like that too. And it goes back to an earlier episode when we watched The Wicker Man, and you had Lord Summerisle and all of his fake biology and his fake this and fake religion. And he looks at the other guy and he says, well, wasn't Jesus born a virgin and of a ghost? And he's like, whoa. Yeah. So it's, when you start laying it out,
yeah,
it's incredible where all that kind of.
Yeah. And as a Christian myself, I think to myself, even if it was just a mythology, even if the whole story of Jesus' life and death was a mythology, not real, not a real person, does it make it any less sacred? Does it make any of this any less sacred? Is a tree any less sacred? I mean, it's just a different school of thought. So, I mean, I think that's something to take away from the idea of witchcraft in this movie, is that I think that the movie probably was portrayed in Hollywood like, ooh, we're going to get into witches. It's going to be scary. People are going to love it. And it actually ended up displaying kind of a lot of the words that they speak in perfect love and perfect trust to enter the circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how is that evil? How are we looking at this as like, it's pure darkness and evil, where, that's just it. It's not. Nothing is pure light and nothing is pure evil. It's all the things depending on the intention you put into it. So
way back to what she said, it's everything. I still love that. I think that's a key part of the movie. That's something that stuck out to me as well. I mean, what in this movie, like what have you taken part of that looks just like something? Because the final scene when they go up and they show up with their animals, and is that the final scene? Close to it.
Yeah, the climax of the movie is where the snakes come in. By the way, there were 10,000 snakes used to film this.
That's 10,000 more than I need to know about. Like, that's, yeah.
Can you believe that? Can you imagine what it would be like to film that? I don't mind snakes, but I still probably would have had a problem with that. My issue was more the maggots and the toilet and all the things, which reminded me of this Suspiria,
Oh yeah.
where the maggots are raining from the ceilings. I'm like, oh no, thank you.
And the rats, the roaches,
Rats.
whatever it was. Like there was so much going on. But yeah, I can't deal with snakes. But I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you can call me a witch in the case of like how it would show up in Halloween and stuff, because I'm like, no, thanks. Yucky.
Right. Did you catch the little Easter egg? We see Chris early on when they're playing football. He's playing football.
Yeah.
And I don't know
I
if
didn't
this was
catch it.
intentional or not. Maybe I'm way looking into this, but he wore the number 86. What's 86 usually mean? You rejected, discard, you cancel, you throw them out. And what happens to Chris? That's Skeet Ulrich's character.
Yes.
He was wearing the number 86. I don't know if that's coincidence or if they did it on purpose, but
I didn't catch that. That's interesting. Yeah. He was definitely yeah.
yeah, we didn't go too far.
Again, the theme of when witchcraft is used to empower, this is an example of why it's not pure evil. I mean, this is an example of, here was this guy, obviously in a very intense love spell, and she was kind of like, she really just wanted to humiliate him. And this is just how it ended up playing out. But he's attempting to sexually assault her.
Yep.
Trigger warning. Sorry, we're in the movie, but she is lucky enough to get away. But it's this idea like, how do if I can't physically overcome this, if I couldn't have gotten away, he can physically overpower me. Again, the witchcraft being associated most with women, being that women are more of the oppressed and helpless in situations where they need something like witchcraft to feel more empowered, to feel like more in control of their life. So here's this kind of jerk. He totally treats her horrible. Tells everyone that they had done it since high school. They're like, everyone's saying, Chris is telling everybody that you did it. And she's like, no, he didn't. And then he's like, I never want to see you again. And he tries to discard her. So, I mean, this is her taking her power back. That moment where she's like, F you. I was like, that feeling felt so familiar. Not that I went through that experience in high school, but just that feeling of like boys making fun of you, boys being terrible to you, boys being mean to you. That was familiar to me. And so it feels helpless. It feels like, I don't have a comeback for this. I don't have anywhere to take my power back. I just feel like I'm victim to whatever they say about me.
It's gotta be, that's like an awful feeling. Like that's, once again, going back to wanting to be a part of something, wanting to belong, wanting to feel that way.
Yeah.
And
because in the 90s, if you're a girl in high school, you're either a nobody, a weirdo, a slut, like Nancy is accused of being, or a prude, which is like kind of what Sarah was accused of being, because she was a little bit more buttoned up and a little bit more conservative, and you can't win, girls, they can't win. That's how it felt to me in high school. It was like,
I believe right there when Chris has his issues arise, without triggering too much, that's after that, and she gets away, that's when the music, that's when Portishead, that's when that Portishead score kicks in. And to me, I was like, oof, that's fucking heavy. Like it was, that had to be a tough scene to get approved to even be in the movie, honestly. Because it was hard to watch. It was just hard to watch.
I'll be down in a minute. Sorry. Okay, I'm back.
I paused. It was good. That part was hard to watch. Like that had to be hard to get across to censors. I don't even know how they got that scene in the movie, because it was a difficult piece to watch, but heavy fucking thing to see. I want to ask you, before we get out of here, I want to ask you what you think about the theory. Maybe could be accurate, but there's the theory that Sarah was the only actual witch, and the rest of them were actually just leeching power off of Sarah, off of her magic. Do you think that's the case, or do they all have their own?
I think that when I just take into consideration how I feel or interact with magic in that way, I think that it did take all four of them to participate in their intentions together when they were all in line in like cohesive,
Yeah.
and that's when their power was the strongest. It wasn't until Sarah was able to overcome her fear and be able to invoke the spirit herself and to say, I'm going to need this as long as I can keep myself in check and not do what Nancy did with it when she invoked the spirit and took it into herself.
Yeah.
She was able to kind of be that light to Nancy's dark, if there was, that.
Yin and
Again,
yang.
I think both have both, but it kind of then was able to, have that final battle scene between the two of them because they both had really powerful powers from Manon and able to battle it out. But I think that it was all four of them working together when they were calling corners, when they were doing spells together. Bonnie needed it to, which, by the way, I forgot to mention this part when her back is full of scars and she's wanting to clear that up. It was Nancy who was doing the hands over the back. That's pretty much Reiki. That's energy healing work that she's doing there. I mean, they don't call it that in the movie. Reiki isn't necessarily associated with witchcraft. They are considered to be different things, but that's healing energy she's putting into her body, and she's doing that to heal her scars on the back. And I think, during those scenes when they're all working together, there is something to be said for that collective power.
That's incredible. I didn't even pick up on that. So look at you. That's why we have you. You're the expert.
Yeah.
Final
It was
thought.
interesting to me. I was like, oh, wow, look at that. She's over
Right?
there doing Reiki. And because she is also a light being herself, light and dark. I mean, Nancy was never just evil or just, she's doing that healing work to her friend because she wants her friend to feel better. There
Yeah.
has to be the heart in that to be able to project that out through her hands. So it worked.
Indeed. Final thoughts on The Craft.
Yeah, one more. Rachel True, who plays Rochelle. I know we talked about Veruca. Am I always saying her name wrong? I don't know. Veruca Balk. She became a pagan after this movie, right? We talked about that. But Rachel True has also dabbled in witchcraft in her personal life. And when I was gifted my first tarot deck, before I was learning to read tarot or anything like that, I was gifted Rachel True's tarot deck, which is True Heart Intuitive Tarot.
Wow.
Right there.
Look at that.
So she did. Whoop, there's her name. I'm going to put it in the camera.
Rachel True.
Right there. So she wrote this tarot deck and did the, I believe, the artwork for it as well. So
incredible.
just a little side note there. The first readings that I've ever done with tarot have been with her deck.
I love that. This has been incredible. Teen Witch in The Craft.
Yep. You did not know we had so much to talk about with these two teenage witch movies.
I didn't. I'm glad we did. Man, Courtney, what'd you think?
Two great movies. So much more similar than I would have thought. Right?
What? Like, I still can't get over the fact of how different they were, but similar they were.
Yeah. You would never look at the posters of both of them and be like, oh, these movies belong together.
No, never. But the big news here that we teased way back before we even started talking about the two movies was the actor that we talked to and interviewed about this movie. Go ahead and tell them who it is.
Oh my gosh. I started out saying I didn't really know who the Teen Witch was. And then when I watched it again and realized who it was, Robin Lively.
Robin Lively.
Getting to see her in person is maybe going to be one of the highlights of my life.
And we're going to play that. We interviewed her. We're going to play that interview here in just a minute. But that experience itself, like, really, how crazy is that, Courtney? Because it was the same week that this episode was to air. And like you said, the universe put her in our path She was so warm and inviting to us. We told her what we were doing with the Witch Movie Project. She loved that. Like,
Oh yeah. And
She's
telling
all
her that
that.
I was a real witch and that the message of the movie being to empower young women to feel their own power, that we are really actually powerful creatures, is really important to me. And she was so kind. She was right on board with that.
here, let's go to the interview. Let's go check it out.
All right, thanks. We're here with Robin Lively.
Hi, how are you?
Now, and I've also got a real witch, Courtney
No.
Pearl.
Yep,
She's
real deal.
yeah, she's gonna freak out a little bit. Now, me and her have the Witch Movie Project, and where we break down 2 witch movies, and we happen to put The Craft versus Teen Witch.
I love it. And which is the better one?
Well,
My picks, by the way. I just have to say that.
She gets credit.
they were, but you know what? We figured out. We were like, these 2 movies have nothing in common, but we broke them down. An hour and a half, we broke these things down, and we realized we're like, whoa, the parallels are crazy. There were like so much stuff that was.
I love it.
But you played Louise.
I did.
Now, you got a question.
Yes. So the theme of that movie, and I feel like both movies, is like empowering young women. What do
Absolutely.
you have to say about that?
Oh, I love that the message still holds up, you know? It's about if you believe in yourself, anything can happen.
Yes.
And I love that. So, yeah.
Finding true power.
You know what? The movie 1989, right?
1989, yes.
It holds up. Like we literally watched it. We watched it last
You guys
week.
know the rap?
No. Oh, I tried it on the show though.
You've
Do
gotta learn
you
it.
know it?
Supersonic, idiotic, disconnected, not respecting. Who would ever really want to go and top that? Okay. You guys are awesome.
Now. Oh my gosh, I'm blown away that she just did that. But look, you did say it. This movie does hold up.
Yes, it does.
I've been up here. I saw kids up here that couldn't even see over the table.
No, it was not the best.
It is. Now, we're also here with Promise to Live. And
Fantastic.
promisetolive.org. Go to promisetolive.org and make the promise today.
You are not alone. There's someone out there for you. We love you. You got this.
I
I
didn't,
think this is fantastic. I support it 100%.
I didn't even have to ask for the message. I love that.
Yeah, I love it. You guys are awesome.
Hey.
Believe in yourself, man. Believe in yourself.
Now, I got to ask for her, though, before we get out of here.
Yep.
Can she have this amulet? Because she's been eyeballing this amulet.
Oh, I made these.
Did you really?
Yes, I designed them. I have a sweet little message on the back.
She's got to get one.
And I hand did a bunch of this.
She's got to have one of those.
Yes, I worked on all of
What's
them.
it
My
take to get
husband can
one of those?
attest.
What's it take?
Just a few dollars.
We
No
got a
big
few
deal.
dollars. We got a couple dollars.
Yeah. It's infused with a lot of power, I can tell.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
it. Hey, thank you so much.
You guys are awesome.
Thank
Thank you.
Like, what?
Isn't she fantastic?
She,
love her so
loved
much.
I loved her. Did you get that amulet?
I did. Got it right here. Yep. You got to see the video to see it. It's inscribed.
She
have on the
handmade
back.
these. She says she handmade these things.
I truly believe that whether she knows it or not, that is her creating a spell that goes out to everyone. So she has Louise quote on the back, believe in yourself, and right from the movie. And I think that her putting these out into the world for people is just like creating a spell. It's just like making real magic. I love it.
I can't believe the occurrences of events here. Like the way that this rolled out, just this one episode.
Synchronicities.
Man, I
Yep,
can't
got her autograph.
Oh my
She
God, what
writes.
what's
She
that
writes
say?
to me, just to me, Courtney Pearl. She says, "To my witchy sister, top that." Right there, to me.
I love this.
He also gave me like 3 hugs. I just love her.
She did. She did. You could, but I could see the energy between you two. Like it was genuine. And I even noticed that when the interview was done, I saw you two still chatting it up. She had
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of people.
Oh, that reminds me. I totally forgot what she said because I was kind of in a fog. But she said, "You have such great energy," and I was like, "Thank you."
So did she. Like really. So did
Really
she.
did.
I
Yeah.
thought she was great. So you know what? So very back early on in this episode, I said this was the battle of the Robins. I guess we know which Robin won. It's got to be Robin Lively. We talked to her.
Robin Lively,
Now, if the other Robin wants to come on now and talk to us,
100%.
we could. It'd be, yeah.
Welcome. I welcome anyone from any one of these movies. I'll talk to any of them.
Right? We'll see you guys next week.